It was another gray morning in St. Petersburg, the kind that seemed to press against the window panes and swallow all traces of color. The snow fell slowly, softly, as if tired of its own existence. Inside a small, cluttered art studio, Irina Volkova sat in front of a half-finished canvas. Her brush hovered in mid-air, motionless. The painting, a winter landscape dull and lifeless, had taken weeks, yet it felt like a burden, not a creation. Her fingers trembled as she dipped the brush into a jar of gray-blue paint. The same shades she'd used for years, muted blues, pale whites, dull browns, the same colors that matched the city outside. Once she had loved them. Once every stroke of frost and fog had thrilled her. But now every tone looked dead. Irina leaned back in her chair, letting out a breath that turned white in the cold air. The heater had broken again. She pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders. On the wall beside her, dozens of old paintings stared back. Snowy rivers, frozen birch trees, cloudy skies. They all seemed to blur together, as though one long gray dream had painted itself over her life. She reached for her phone and scrolled through social media, mostly to feel something. Friends posted about their exhibitions, their travels, their awards. She stopped at a photo someone had shared, a turquoise sea under a sky that looked impossibly blue. The caption read, "Palawan, Philippines, the most colorful place on Earth." Irina blinked at the photo. It didn't look real. The water glowed like melted glass, and the boats, painted in every color imaginable, floated like candies on the sea. She scrolled down and saw another image. Fishermen laughing, a child running barefoot with a red kite. Women in bright dresses selling fruit so vivid it looked painted. Without realizing it, she whispered, "How did they see color like that?" Her studio suddenly felt even colder. For weeks, the idea lingered in her mind like a whisper she couldn't ignore. Her friends thought she was being impulsive when she announced she was going to the Philippines. "You're chasing sunlight," one of them joked. "But you'll get bored after a week." Irina just smiled weakly. She didn't know if they were right or not. She only knew that something inside her had gone numb, and she needed to wake it up again. So she booked a one-way ticket to Palawan. When she arrived, the first thing she noticed was the heat, the thick, embracing warmth that felt like an entirely new kind of air. The sky wasn't just blue, it was alive. The green of the palms, the orange of the boats, the pink of the sunset. It all felt too much at first, like stepping into a painting that had been oversaturated by accident. Her taxi wound along a narrow coastal road lined with nipa huts, where children waved as she passed. Dogs dozed in the sun. Men repaired fishing nets while humming softly. Irina rolled down the window, letting the humid wind tangle her hair. She hadn't felt wind like that in years. It carried salt, laughter, and life. Her small guest house sat by a beach in El Nido. The owner, a middle-aged woman named Luz, greeted her with a smile that seemed to outshine the morning. "Welcome, ma'am," she said in gentle English. "You're an artist?" Irina nodded shyly. "Yes, I'm a painter." Luz grinned wider. "Then you'll find many colors here." That night, Irina walked along the beach barefoot. The sand was soft, warm, golden. The sea glowed faintly under the moonlight, a gentle turquoise blending into silver. It wasn't quiet. The crickets sang, the waves whispered. Someone's guitar played a slow Tagalog song in the distance. For the first time in a long while, Irina didn't want silence. She took out her sketchbook and began to draw the outline of the palm trees, the boats, the faraway mountains that faded into mist. Her pencil moved easily, freely. She hadn't felt that kind of peace in years. The next morning, Luz invited her to join the family breakfast. The long table was covered in food Irina had never seen before. Mangoes so orange they looked unreal, purple rice, grilled fish, and something called longanisa. Irina smiled awkwardly. "Everything is so colorful," Luz laughed. "That's how we live here. Life is color." When Irina took her first bite of mango, it shocked her. It was sweet, fragrant, alive. She laughed without meaning to. Luz laughed with her. After breakfast, Irina set up her easel near the beach. The colors confused her at first. The shadows here weren't gray, they were violet and soft blue. The sky changed shades every hour. Even the boats carried combinations of colors that no Russian artist would ever dare to use. Children gathered around her, curious. "Ait, what are you painting?" one asked. "The sea," Irina said softly. "But the sea isn't just blue," a little girl said, pointing. Look, there's green and gold and a little pink when the sun goes down. Irina looked again. The girl was right. She spent the whole day painting, lost in it. For once, her hands didn't ache, her mind didn't doubt. By the time the sun dipped behind the mountains, her canvas had exploded with color. Turquoise waves, red boats, orange skies. She stood back, tears filling her eyes. Luz walked by holding a basket of laundry. She stopped and gasped softly. "Oh, that's beautiful." "That's our sea," Irina turned to her. "It's not finished," Luz smiled. "It doesn't have to be." You captured the feeling. That night, Irina couldn't sleep. Her mind was full, not of gray thoughts, but of light. She heard the waves outside, the rustle of palms, and thought of home. Her studio in Russia suddenly seemed like a black and white photo compared to this place. Over the next weeks, she painted every day. She painted the fishermen, the markets, the children who played with her paintbrushes. She painted Luz and her family having dinner under hanging lanterns. She painted sunsets so vivid that she sometimes cried halfway through. And little by little, she noticed something strange. Her sadness was fading, replaced by something softer, lighter. It wasn't happiness exactly. It was peace. One evening, as she cleaned her brushes by the beach, Luz joined her, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You look happy, Irina," Irina nodded. "I haven't felt like this in years." "I don't know why," Luz smiled knowingly. "Maybe the colors found you again." Irina looked at her hands, stained with blue, green, and orange paint. Maybe they did. That night, the moon hung low and yellow over the water. Irina sat on the sand, hugging her knees, watching the reflection shimmer across the waves. She felt something she hadn't felt since childhood: wonder. For the first time in years, she wanted to paint not for galleries or critics, but simply because she was alive. She opened her sketchbook and began to draw the stars above Palawan. As her pencil moved, she whispered to herself, "Thank you, Philippines," and though no one answered, she swore the sea shimmered a little brighter, like it understood. Irina's mornings in Palawan soon became a kind of ritual. She would wake before sunrise, the air still cool and the sea whispering gently outside her window. Luz would already be in the kitchen, boiling coffee, humming a soft Tagalog tune. Irina would step outside barefoot, feeling the earth beneath her toes, and wait for the first burst of color over the mountains. That first flash of gold across the water was everything she needed to start the day. It was as if the sun dipped its fingers into her heart, stirring the gray shadows that used to live there. Each morning, she told herself, "Remember this color." Word began to spread among locals and tourists about the Russian woman who painted the sea differently. Sometimes, curious travelers would wander up to her small corner of the beach to watch her work. Some took photos. Others asked if she sold her paintings. Irina always smiled politely, not knowing what to say. She wasn't painting for money, not yet. She was painting to breathe again. One afternoon, a Filipino art student named Marco approached her with wide eyes. "Ma'am, your colors, they're alive," he said, almost in awe. Irina laughed softly. "They were dead before. Now they live here." He crouched beside her easel, studying the brushstrokes. "You don't paint like a tourist. You paint like you've been here all your life." She paused, brush in hand. "Maybe part of me has," Marco smiled. "You should join the art exhibit in town. Local artists, foreigners. It's about how people see Palawan differently. It's next month." The thought of displaying her work again felt strange, almost frightening. Back home in Russia, her exhibitions were quiet, formal events in cold halls filled with critics. Here, she imagined barefoot children, beach laughter, and perhaps someone playing guitar nearby. The idea felt warm, human. "I'll think about it," she said, though her heart had already whispered yes. That evening, she walked through the small town with Luz. The streets buzzed with scooters and music. Vendors sold halo, grilled seafood, and colorful trinkets. Everywhere she looked, color danced. On walls, on clothes, on faces. She couldn't stop smiling. Luz noticed and nudged her playfully. "You look like a Filipina already." Irina laughed, shaking her head. "If I stay here too long, maybe I will become one." They stopped by a small stall where an old man sold paintings of local life. Farmers, fishermen, churches. The style was simple, almost childlike, but the colors carried stories. Luz introduced him. "This is Tito Ben. He paints from his heart." The old man studied Irina's hands, speckled with paint. "You too, artista?" Irina nodded. Yes, I try, he chuckled. Art is not trying. It's remembering. Remembering what? She asked. That life is beautiful, he said simply, his eyes twinkling. Those words stayed with her long after they left the market. That night, under the fan's gentle hum, Irina couldn't sleep. She kept replaying them in her head. Maybe that was what her art had lost in Russia, memory of beauty, not just the skill of technique. She began painting with a different intention the next morning. Not to perfect, but to remember. The laughter of children, the way Luce's hair glowed in the sunlight, the way mangoes smelled when freshly sliced. She painted sound, scent, touch. When the day of the exhibit arrived, Irina was nervous. Her hands trembled as she set up her canvases inside the small seaside hall, which was decorated with woven fabrics and capiz shell lamps. Locals wandered in slowly, chatting in Tagalog, sipping coconut juice. The scent of salt and grilled food drifted in from the beach. Marco arrived, grinning proudly. I told you your art belongs here. Irina smiled faintly, her stomach fluttering. We'll see. Her section had 3 paintings, one of the Palawan sea at sunset, one of Luce's family at breakfast, and one simply titled Home, a surreal mix of Russian birch trees melting into Filipino palm trees, snow blending into sand. It was her way of showing the 2 worlds she now carried inside her. When people gathered in front of her work, she overheard their murmurs. It's like I can feel the heat of the sun, one said. And look, there's emotion in the waves. An older woman turned to her. Where are you from, dear? Russia, Irina said. The woman's eyes widened. Then your heart must be half here already. Later that night, the small hall filled with applause. A local mayor gave a short speech about art as a bridge between cultures. When they called Irina's name to the stage for a special mention, she felt her throat tighten as she stepped forward. She looked at the crowd, Filipinos smiling, clapping, cheering for her, a stranger who came from a land of cold and silence. Her voice trembled as she spoke. In Russia, I painted snow. Here, I learned to paint life. Thank you for giving me back my colors. The applause grew louder. Luce cried openly, waving her handkerchief. Irina laughed through her tears. That night, after the exhibit, she and Luce sat by the shore, drinking coconut wine under the stars. I didn't expect any of this, Irina admitted. Back home, I felt invisible. Here, people see me. Luce placed a hand on her shoulder. Maybe you see yourself now. The sea shimmered quietly, as if agreeing. Over the next few weeks, Irina's paintings began appearing online. Tourists posted photos of her art, tagging her Instagram handle. A small travel blog wrote about the Russian painter who captured the soul of Palawan. Soon, people started asking if she would sell prints. She didn't know what to do with the attention. Fame wasn't her goal, but it felt like her paintings were doing something she never could, speaking for her heart. Then came an email that surprised her. A cultural organization in Manila invited her to join an international exhibit titled Colors of the Islands. They wanted her to represent the Philippines' influence on global, or she reread the email 3 times, unsure if it was real. Luce was the first to know, you see. I told you, Luce said, grinning ear to ear. You are part of the Philippines now. Irina smiled shyly. I don't deserve it, Luce shook her head. You painted what we feel. You deserve it more than you think. When Irina arrived in Manila weeks later, she was overwhelmed by the noise and energy of the city. Tall buildings, busy streets, lights everywhere. But beneath the chaos, she felt the same warmth she'd found in Palawan, people smiling, helping, talking like they'd known each other for years. The exhibit was held in a modern gallery filled with works from artists across Asia. When Irina's pieces were unveiled, she noticed something strange. Her bright, tropical paintings stood out like windows to another world. A Filipino journalist approached her after the opening. You're Russian, but your art feels Filipino. How did that happen? Irina smiled softly. Maybe because kindness has a color and I just borrowed yours. The quote made headlines the next day. Russian artist paints Filipino warmth. Her following grew. Invitations came from other countries, interviews from magazines. Yet Irina stayed humble, often replying with simple thank yous. Fame was never the point. What mattered to her was that her art made people feel. When she returned to Palawan weeks later, Luce greeted her like family. The children ran to her shouting, "Eight Irina's back!" They showed her small paintings they made in school, sunsets, boats, the sea. Irina looked at them, heart swelling. "You're all artists," she said. A little boy grinned. "Because you taught us how to see color." That night, Irina sat outside her room, sketching again. But this time, it wasn't just Palawan she drew. It was a vision of Russia painted in Filipino hues. Snow that glowed with faint gold, skies tinted with soft pink, birch trees surrounded by warmth. For the first time, she imagined bringing these colors home. She realized her journey wasn't just about finding color in the Philippines. It was about carrying it back, to remind others that even the coldest hearts could be warmed if they let a little light in. As the waves murmured softly in the dark, Irina whispered to the stars, "Maybe someday, Russia will see what I see." And far away, she could almost hear her grandmother's voice, gentle, proud, and smiling. When Irina's plane touched down in Moscow, a thin sheet of frost covered the runway. The gray skyline of her city stretched out like a painting left unfinished. It had been 6 months since she'd left for the Philippines, and though she was back in familiar surroundings, everything looked different. Or perhaps she was the one who had changed. Her suitcase was filled with rolled canvases bursting with tropical hues, sunsets from El Nido, fishermen rowing in soft gold light, children laughing under palm trees. The customs officer raised an eyebrow when he saw her luggage full of art materials and large wooden frames wrapped in plastic. "You bring the sun with you, yes?" he joked. Irina laughed softly. Something like that. When she returned to her small apartment, she didn't turn on the heater right away. The room felt like a museum of her past. Gray walls, dim lighting, and canvases painted in shades of ash, blue, and white. Her old work once reflected the winter in her soul, but now beside them, the colors of Palawan looked alive. She leaned one of her tropical paintings against the wall and stood back. The contrast was startling. For a long time, Irina simply stared, not at the colors, but at the story they told. The Philippines hadn't just changed her technique. It had changed her heart. Within weeks, she set up a small studio exhibit in her town, calling it Light After the Monsoon. She invited her former students, fellow painters, and a few curious neighbors. The day of the opening, snowflakes drifted gently outside, but inside the studio, the room glowed with warmth. People paused before each painting as if standing before a window to another world. One painting, titled "The Women of Coron," showed 2 Filipinas laughing by the shore while washing clothes, the sunlight dancing on the water like diamonds. Another, "Jeepney Dreams," captured a rush of colors, red, yellow, green, a symbol of life's unstoppable motion. Her friend Pavel approached her, holding a cup of coffee. "These are yours?" he asked in disbelief. "Irina, this isn't just painting. This is sunlight. This is life," Irina smiled. "It's the Philippines," she said softly. "They live color the way we breathe air." The exhibition gained quiet attention. A local journalist wrote a piece titled, "Russian Painter Brings the Tropics to the Tundra." Soon, Irina was invited to talk at an art school in St. Petersburg about how cultural immersion could change artistic vision. On stage, she stood nervously before the students. Behind her was a large projection of her Palawan sunset painting, orange melting into pink and gold. "When I first arrived in the Philippines," she began, "I was tired. I had forgotten how to see. Everything I painted looked like winter, even when it wasn't. But one day a fisherman told me, 'Color is just emotion you can see.' And I realized maybe I had stopped feeling. And that's why my art had gone cold." The students listened intently. Irina went on, telling them about the Filipino families who welcomed her into their homes, about Luz who sold coconuts but always shared them freely, about children painting murals with their fingers and laughter. "They showed me," Irina said, "that art doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be alive." Her speech went viral on Russian social media. People were fascinated, and a Russian artist transformed by Filipino warmth and simplicity. Soon, invitations poured in for her to hold exhibitions across the country. One cold afternoon, she was invited to an interview on national television. The host smiled as the cameras rolled. "Irina, your story has touched many hearts. What is it about the Philippines that changed you?" Irina took a breath. "In Russia, we paint the world as it is. In the Philippines, they paint the world as it feels. I think I learned that feeling is its own kind of truth." The host leaned forward. "And what truth did you find?" "That joy can survive even in the smallest things," she replied. A smile, a song, a splash of color. "I used to think the world was gray. Now I know it's just waiting for us to see the light." Months later, her art reached beyond galleries. Schools began using her story as part of cultural exchange lessons. Children painted their own Filipino colors on classroom walls: oranges for warmth, yellows for laughter, blues for friendship. Teachers began telling students that inspiration doesn't come from the place you're born, but from where your heart chooses to see beauty. Irina started a small project called Colors of Kindness, a workshop blending Russian and Filipino art traditions. Through social media, she connected with Filipino schools, and they exchanged paintings through mail. A classroom in Cebu sent her students drawings of snowy forests, while Russian children painted rice terraces glowing under the sun. When the first box of Filipino art arrived in Moscow, Irina gathered her students to open it. The smell of crayons and acrylics filled the room, and the paintings inside, all bright and full of movement, felt like sunlight spilling onto the frozen floor. One child whispered, "Teacher, can we send them ours too?" Irina nodded. "Yes, but remember, don't just copy their colors. Paint your heart." As spring thawed into summer, Irina received a message from Luz, her friend in Palawan. Luz had seen Irina's story online and sent a short video. In it, she stood beside the same beach where Irina once painted, holding a canvas with the words written in bright pink paint. "You brought our sun to your snow." Tears welled in Irina's eyes. That message stirred something deep inside her. She decided to return to the Philippines, not as a traveler this time, but as someone coming home. When she arrived back in Palawan, Luz was there waiting, older perhaps, but with the same kind smile. The air smelled of salt and flowers. "You came back," Luz said, hugging her. "I had to," Irina whispered. "My colors were getting lonely." Together, they walked through the familiar market streets. Some vendors remembered her. Children waved and called her Miss Irina, the painter from the cold country. That evening, Irina set up her easel by the shore again. The sun was setting, painting the sky in the same shades that had changed her life. Luz sat beside her, watching in silence as Irina dipped her brush into the orange paint. "You know," Luz said softly, "we thought you'd forget us." Irina smiled through tears. "You can't forget light once you've seen it." The next morning, she held a small art class for local kids. They painted the Russian snow, but with Filipino joy: blue skies, dancing snowmen, winter festivals filled with music. That night, the villagers organized a small celebration for her. Lanterns swayed in the warm air, and people sang anak and bayan ko. Irina didn't understand every word, but she understood the feeling: belonging, gratitude, connection. Standing there, surrounded by the same warmth that had reignited her soul, she realized something profound. She had come to the Philippines searching for color, but what she truly found was love. In every smile, every brushstroke, every shared story between two worlds that once seemed so far apart. Years later, Irina's works hung in both Russian and Filipino museums, one half of the gallery showing the cold blues of her early years, the other half glowing with the colors of her rebirth. And at the center of the exhibition stood a small sign that read, "Dedicated to the people who taught me that color begins in the heart." Every visitor who walked through her gallery left with a quiet smile, as if carrying a bit of that warmth home with them. And as Irina often said in interviews afterward, "I didn't go to the Philippines to find beauty. I went there and beauty found me."